All right, hello and welcome everyone. It's time to get started for our next session. My name is Steve Teresi. I'm the Director of Training and Technical Services at JL Audio. I'm located down in sunny South Florida, just a few miles north of the JL Audio headquarters. And I have with me today Kevin Ferry from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Say hello, Kevin.
How's it going, everybody?
Fantastic. And then we just wound up Mr. Rob Haynes, who's down in Southern California, who's going to be our presenter for this afternoon session. Rob, say hello, please.
Hi.
I said say hello, not hi. Come on.
You know me, I'm a rule breaker.
Fantastic. Well, just to recap, if you haven't been part of these sessions in the past, we are doing this live on WebEx as well as streaming to Facebook. If you're on WebEx, there's a chat function over on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see that, on the bottom of your video screen, you should see some options, and one of them would look like a little chat bubble. Click on that, and you should see the chat. Kevin and I will be minding the chat function there, as well as for our Facebook Live viewers. If you're viewing on Facebook, you can go ahead and make comments and post questions in the chat feature there as well. And Kevin and myself, as well as usually some of the guys back at the factory, will be answering some of those questions there. So just as a quick heads up, Rob will be presenting, so he will not be able to see any of the comments we make about him behind his back. If you do need to get something to his attention, let Kevin or myself know, and we'll flag him down when appropriate. If not, we'll do a recap at the end for some questions and answers. Finally, all of these sessions have been specifically intended to last between 30 and 45 minutes. We value your time, and we realize dedicating more than that amount of time is somewhat of a challenge for most of us. So we've tried to restructure things specifically to make these a little bit more focused. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Rob. Take it away.
Thank you, Steve. I just need Kevin to let me share my screen, and I think we'll be good to go from there.
You have the ball.
Can I share my... Oh, I do. It's been a while since I've done this, if you can't tell. A couple of days.
Well, but sports not being on 3 days.
All right, so you guys should see my keynote now. All right. So thanks for joining, everyone. This session, we're going to dive into the deep waters, if you will, with marine speakers. See what I did there? Marine wire. Must be early in the morning still. I'm sure everyone's laughing at their computers.
Wearing off on you.
But in all seriousness, this session we're gonna get into the marine speaker family at JL Audio. So we're gonna talk about the M6 and M3 coaxials, and then the M7, M6, M3 subwoofer side of things. We're gonna kind of focus on some of the benefits on the M6 side of things. We're going to discuss why M3 is far from an entry-level speaker, despite being our entry-level speaker, and also making sure we use the right products in the right application or environment. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the M6 and M7 side of things. If you're not familiar with our marine speakers at JL Audio, some cool things to know. All of our speakers, whether it's car, marine, or home, are all engineered here in the United States at our South Florida facility. Lucio has a very talented team of, I think right now, upwards 18, 20 engineers that are dedicated to designing every single JL Audio loudspeaker product. Again, whether it's a M3 6.5-inch marine coaxial, or a radical new design for an in-wall home woofer or in-ceiling hub subwoofer system for the home. We do all of that in our South Florida facility. And especially on the marine side of things, like all of our products, they are designed from the ground up. We design purpose-built products. We don't just recycle products for different uses. So all marine speakers are all designed from the ground up. And a lot of that is from our real-world marine experience. I think one of the things where we really benefit at JL Audio and our expertise when it comes to the marine market is we live and breathe marine. We are a company of marine enthusiasts. You know, when the weekend comes or it's after hours, we're out on the water. So we understand the demands of the environment in terms of acoustical issues as well as weather-related issues. And all of that goes into the development of our marine speakers during the engineering process in South Florida. Especially on M6, M3, you're going to find numerous patented technologies. Again, this is one of the benefits of being a prime engineering and manufacturing company, is our speakers are full of patents that Lucio and the rest of the engineering team have come up with over the last couple of decades, and with M6 the last couple of years, as you'll find with some of the new technologies that we're going to talk about. So with that said, let's get into the M6 side of things. M6 does replace the long-standing M series line of speakers. I want to say it was 14 years. Came out in 03, 04, and was replaced by M6 in 2019. So it lived a long life. And I think, again, that's a testament to the way we do things at JL Audio. For a line of speakers to live 14 years shows that it's not just about how you build it, but it's about how you design it, and designing something around a very, very harsh environment such as the marine and power sports markets. So, and throughout that M series process, we did constant engineering, constant environmental testing to further improve it based off of potential warranties or issues that may have been seen in the field. And that same engineering will continue to go on throughout M6's, what I'm sure will be long lifespan, because we don't do products at JL Audio. Yeah.
So Rob, I gotta tell you, I'm looking at these images, and it always strikes me. There's a subtlety in all of it. That it obviously we redid the frame from some of the older product to the newer products that we're showing here, and just the way things are integrated. I'm just looking at all of it. Yes, it's functional. We get that, but there's a beauty and an elegance that goes into some of the design that just every so often you just take a step back and you realize it's more than just a combination of parts. There's a bigger picture to it all, and I just wanted to share that because I'm looking at particularly the image on the left showing the terminals and the way the frame kind of comes around it. It's beautiful. Sorry.
No, I mean, yeah, especially with M6, the aesthetics of it, even though you don't get to see the basket, but the details, the flow, the way everything's integrated into one another, it really shows a lot of thought went into this. We're not just grabbing frames and different cones and spiders and motors off a shelf. This is all purpose-built, not just ground-up design on how the speaker functions, but how it looks and incorporates that into the functionality of the speaker as well. So all M6 speakers do use what we call a long excursion woofer design. And what that means is these are designed to be big, burly speakers with massive amounts of excursion. And that's very important out on the water. Again, we got wind, waves, motor, all sorts of things that we have to overcome, especially in power sports, motorcycles and UTVs. Those are very loud. And we can only send so much power to a speaker. So by having a large woofer, a suspension that's able to move a lot, that's going to help us get louder as well. And that's one of the key things with the M6 design. I was doing a training about a year or so ago, and I had someone ask me at the table we were at on the show floor if our M6 880 was a subwoofer. I said, no, it's a coaxial speaker. He says, why is it so darn big? It looks like a sub. I said, because it gets really loud. And that's really what it's all about on the marine environment. Yeah, you can get loud with an 8.8-inch cone in the upper mid-range area, but if you don't have anything on the back end, you're going to have no low frequency response. And this long woofer excursion design really allows the M6 products to shine in those lower frequencies where a smaller speaker, a speaker with a smaller, stiffer suspension or motor may not be able to. So that's a key aspect to M6. And again, that's part of our experience and understanding the marine environment. It's not just about power making a speaker loud, but how much movement as well. Because we got to remember, our ears, our hearing, it's all air molecules hitting our eardrums. And if a speaker can move more, it's going to move more air, which is going to make it louder. So I think it's a big design philosophy for us with our M6 line of speakers. Additionally, we give you multiple options with the M6. You have a 6.5-inch coaxial, a 7.7-inch coaxial, and that 8.8-inch coaxial. Now the sizes are key as well, because as I just said, the more air we can move, the louder it's going to be. So if we have a larger cone area, we're going to move more air as well. So what's unique about that is not only does it get louder, but it's going to change how the handoff with the tweeter happens too, which is why we did a staged tweeter design on M6. So on that 8.8-inch, you have a larger 1.25-inch silk dome tweeter, a 1-inch silk dome tweeter on that 7.7, and a 0.8-inch silk dome tweeter on the 6.5. Due to the different sizes in the cones, that upper mid-range frequency where it kind of starts to blend in with the tweeter, it's going to react differently on each of those 3 models, which is why we have a different size tweeter. So we have a smoother handoff in that very key upper mid-range high frequency crossover area. Just helps yield a smoother overall result. And I think that's key, especially going with that silk dome tweeter. Helps keeps things a little smoother, less fatiguing than metal dome tweeters typically would be. But again, for me, the option to get loud with M6, that's where the extra cone area really comes into play. You know, if you don't have a room on a vessel to put a lot of speakers, use a larger M6. That 7.7 inch has almost 50% more cone area than the 6.5. The 8.8 inch has 34% more cone area than the 7.7. And we've practically almost doubled the size of cone area when you compare that 8.8 inch to the 6.5 inch coaxial. One 8.8 should give you close to the same amount of output as two 6.5. So if you don't have a room for a ton of speakers, if you can fit that 8.8 inch in there, that's a good way to help get some extra output where you might not have a lot of space or a ton of power for a lot of speakers. So that extra cone area on the M6 options really is beneficial. And speaking of tweeters, as we discussed, M6 does use a specially coated silk dome. For me, I've always been a silk dome fan. I like them smoother, more natural response silk tends to give. I also find it tends to be less fatiguing after extended listening. Metal dome tweeters, while they can provide some extra energy, some extra brightness, they can also start to it can be tiring at loud levels for extended periods, which typically is what marine's all about. You're out on the water for a couple hours, the radio's cranked, while you're having a good time with your friends, and it can start to get fatiguing on the ears. That's just how our ears work. So I like that silk aspect. It's still very detailed. Those larger tweeters allow us to help get a little extra oomph, if you will, out of those high frequencies, but keep it smooth at the same time. We're also not using any potentially corrosive materials that could rust out when they're exposed to the water, especially if you're in a saltwater environment. That can rip a metal dome tweeter, if not done properly, rip it apart really quickly. So that silk dome, not only does it sound great, but it helps with the reliability aspect of the speaker as well. One of the cool things on M6 when it comes to the tweeters is on our new sports grill models. The sports grill uses really cool patented tweeter bridge. So you may remember on the M and MX sport models, the tweeter was actually built into the grill. So if you wanted to maybe paint the grill, you would have to physically break the tweeter out of it, do all of your prep, sand, primer, paint, and then try to reassemble it and hope you put it back together and hope you didn't break the tweeter assembly. Now with M6, it's actually a 3-piece modular design, which is really cool. The tweeter bridge itself physically mounts to the core driver, and then the trim ring and the grill insert mount on top of that in 2 different pieces. What's nice about this modular design is it really simplifies the customization aspect. I find as boats are becoming more and more customized from the factory, whether it's an assortment of interior colors, exterior colors, power sports, motorcycles, custom choppers where grills are being painted candy red to match the bags and the fairing. This really makes it a lot easier to customize the speakers because we're not breaking them now. They're designed to come apart. So it gives you a lot easier experience when it comes to primering, prepping, sanding, painting the grills to further customize them if needed. So that's a really cool aspect. Yes, Steve?
Tiny little screwdriver to get them apart.
Yeah. So it's really simplifies the process. And I like it also because it gives you that two-tone look on the sport grill models. That gunmetal tweeter bridge really pops with that white or titanium grill you'll find on the sports. So to me, that two-tone just gives it a more elegant, high-quality look than a solid piece that we had used on our other models. So again, it's not just the performance, but we do care about how it looks. And I think M6 has taken that premium look to that next level, and for me, I love it. So that's for me really cool. When we were looking at the earlier images, you may have noticed that the M6 models look a lot slimmer than the M series. And that's because we've actually integrated two-way crossover networks into the top of the speaker frame. It's not a box mounted to the side of the frame like the previous models were. We've integrated it in, which helps make the install a little easier, being we don't have that crossover hanging off the speaker frame, but it also helps protect the crossovers furthermore from vibrations and from the elements because they're in the top of the frame. When the speaker is assembled, they're completely sealed off in a watertight environment at the top of the speaker. And if you look closely, you'll notice those are all different crossover networks. As the mid-range and different size tweeters are going to require different frequencies and filters, we've implemented different filters into each of the three M6 coaxials. So these are purpose-built two-way crossovers. It's not just a cap restricting high or low frequencies from going to the tweeter, but this is a dedicated two-way crossover network for seamless summation of the mid-range and the tweeter, and really yield excellent results. So a lot of work went into that crossover network, and I like these pictures because this is something you'll never see unless you physically break the speaker, and warranty departments never like that. So, but this is cool. And again, a lot of work went into it to make sure we had that overall just perfect response acoustically and electrically using these crossover networks. So again, it's all about being a purpose-built, application-built product. Additionally, we got to also make sure that we have the right subwoofer. And this is where the M6 and M7 line has a little bit of flexibility. On the subwoofer side of things, we have the M6-8, we have an M6-10, and the massive M7-12 that's so big it doesn't even fit on the screen. So,
No, that's funny.
yeah. Wah, wah, wah.
Huge. UGE.
Yes. So, some things to know real quick about the subwoofers. I want to talk about that 8.8 inch real quick, the M6-8. I've been asked before if the M6-8 is just an M6-880 with the tweeter taken off. And I know why this gets asked, and that's because both the M6-880 and the M6-8 subwoofers share the same frame. The house is the same, but they're two completely different purpose-built products. The M6-8, while it has the same plastic house, the motor, the suspension, the geometry of everything, the power handling, everything is completely different. It is a purpose-built subwoofer. It just has the same frame as the coaxial. So we didn't take the coaxial and just remove the tweeter and say, here's the subwoofer. It is a legit subwoofer and completely different from the coaxial other than the frame. So just be aware of that. Also on the M6 side and M7 side of things, we have to make sure we choose the right subwoofer for the application. So I'll say this, don't pull a Rob. And what I mean by that is when I was new to retail and selling marine audio, really, I had a customer come into the store I was working at, said, I have a boat, I want to go fishing, or I think he was going crabbing. He said, I want to go crabbing tomorrow because I was up in Washington. And he says, I want a JL audio system. Can you do it today? I said, absolutely. I'll sell you whatever JL audio you want. So I sold him what I had, and we fire up the system, and it sounded horrible. I was like, the bass is terrible. There's like no bass. What's going on? And it was because I sold him a subwoofer for an enclosure, and we did an infinite baffle where we cut it into the hole. So we have two different types of subwoofers in the on the M6 family for the 8.8 and the 10-inch models. If you're selling an M712IB, an M610IB, or an M68IB, that IB stands for infinite baffle. It means it is not going to use an enclosure. Instead, it's going to mount directly to the vessel. So you're going to cut a hole in the fiberglass. We always will recommend to brace it, especially on that 35 plus pound M712IB, to prevent any splintering of the gel coat or the woofers falling out with impact on waves. But wherever you cut it, whether it's in a center console or up in the bow or the hole area, it's going to use all of that airspace behind the fiberglass to act as its enclosure. The suspension on an infinite baffle sub is done differently to compensate for all of this extra airspace, unlike a subwoofer designed for a compact enclosure. So if you put the wrong sub in for that application, you are not going to get the bass results you want. So if it's an IB subwoofer which will be, again, you have 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch options. You're going to mount that directly to the vessel's fiberglass and use the airspace behind the fiberglass to act as the enclosure. If we do need an enclosure, that is where the W models come in. You have a 10-inch and 8.8-inch option called the M610W and M68W. These are designed for compact enclosures, whether it's an enclosure you build yourself. They're also available in our preloaded enclosures, which are built out of fiberglass in our facility in South Florida. And a lot of work and thought have actually gone into these little enclosures. You may notice if you look at these, there's no terminal cups on them. We don't know where they're going to be mounted on a vessel. You don't want a terminal cup to be visible. So when you install these, you'll actually remove the driver, drill a hole to run your speaker wire in, then seal all of that up and put the sub in. Additionally, same with the mounting hardware. There's no mounting holes. So you're going to drill your own mounting holes, seal them up, put the driver back in. Additionally, you may notice some of the grooves on the back of the enclosure. That prevents water from pooling up on the top. It allows water to drain behind. And if you look closely, you'll notice a 45-degree chamfer on the bottom of the enclosure. That allows that water that falls behind to also come out from behind the enclosure. You never want standing water on a vessel. Leads to mold, smells, other potential issues. So we make sure any potential buildups can drain out properly. So a lot of thought went into these enclosures. They're made in our fiberglass department. They're painted, polished, all the prep work's done in-house. They look phenomenal and they sound phenomenal, and they're very small. So if you don't have a ton of space in your vessel, these are a great way to get base and not take up a lot of space. One of my favorite aspects of M6 is without a doubt the new patented transflective LED lighting system. Transflective is a pretty cool technology. Transflective itself is not new. It's actually been used in LCD panels for a long time. What it means is light can transmit through something and also reflect off the surface. So for us, when we say we have a patented transflective lighting system, the cone is where the patent is. And what we've done is we've taken a special a polypropylene cone and done a lot of work with it to where we can get light to shine through it. So what we've done on the LED models for M6, the entire top frame of the speaker is surrounded in heavy-duty weatherproof RGB LEDs, and they illuminate the bottom of the cone. But because light can't emit through it, you have this beautiful even glow all the way around the surface to where it literally looks like the cone has been painted. I remember when I first started doing M6 trainings, I had someone say, that's BS, that's marketing, Photoshop. No, what you're looking at right now is an untouched raw picture that was taken by our marketing team. And it got to the point where people didn't think this was a real picture, that our speakers didn't look this good. And I actually had to start using pictures from our launch at the Miami Boat Show where they could start seeing pictures of boats at night with M6 lit up to say, no, look, this is legit. This is the real deal. We're not just taking a couple of, 4 or 5 LEDs on the top of a speaker and, illuminating the surface. Depending on the model, you can have upwards of 30-something LEDs. And when you have that many LEDs underneath the cone, it's seamless. You don't have hot spots where you can see the physical LED reflecting off the surface. And because of this cool transflective cone, when the lights aren't in use, it just looks like a regular cone. It looks like a normal everyday speaker until the lights underneath light up again. And we do have some control options. For those, we have the optional MLCRW, which will give you full RGB control, whether it's the speed of the LEDs as they cycle through their colors automatically. You can go through and pick the color you want it to stay on, and you can also adjust the intensity and power the LEDs on and off from that controller. If you don't need all of that control, maybe you just want them to be a specific color only, you can also hardwire them. On all of the illuminated M6 and M7 models, you're going to actually have a lighting harness that comes out in between your speaker terminals. And from there, in the manual, that's that piece of paper you normally chuck and throw away when you open the packaging, it'll tell you what wires to connect to hardwire your M6 or M7 subwoofer for 7 different solid colors. So if you wanted it yellow, all you need to do is connect 2 or 3 wires that the manual will tell you to, and it'll always be yellow. But if you want the option to cycle through different colors, if you want to change the intensity of them, that's where that MLC RW controller will come in. And yes, you can use other controllers. Just make sure you have a high quality one that will help fight any potential noise. LEDs, boats are noisy. LEDs can emit noise as well. So a lot of work went into that MLC RW controller to make sure any unwanted noise from the LEDs get brought through the speakers themselves, because no one wants that.
That's a big point. The noise issues on boats is pretty bad. It actually reminds me of the very early days of mobile audio, where electronics in a car would interject noise into the audio system. And since the audio system was what was new, everyone says, well, it's got to be the audio stuff that's causing the noise. No, it was other things that were causing the noise. And I think right now we're starting to see that with a lot of the boats, that the boats, since audio is now becoming such a strong part of the boating experience, that some of the electronics and accessories on boats is starting to get better at not injecting noise and being quiet. Unfortunately, the lighting controllers are sort of low on that list, and many of the ones that we had tested did interject a lot of noise into the audio path. So when we did ours, we wanted to make sure that it was as quiet as we could get away with, right? So it's really very, very quiet, like Rob said. And the other point that I know we mentioned is the high current capacity to power up a whole bunch of LEDs. You've already seen we have a bunch of those. So if you've got a larger vessel or even a moderate vessel with a lot of speakers in it, if they're M6s, the MLC RW is something really interesting to look at. Noise-free, high current capacity, something to look for.
Thank you, Steve. So let's jump over to the M3 family. Again, this replaced the extremely popular MX line. And I hate calling M3 and MX when that was around entry level, because while it is our entry level speaker, it's far from entry level. The way I look at M3, it really is built on M6 DNA. It's just been scaled back a bit to make it a little more affordable. They use essentially all of the same materials as the M6 products, but we've done some steps to make it more cost effective, but without really restricting performance. Smaller motor, a smaller voice coil, so they handle a little less power. We use a 3/4 inch silk dome tweeter across the board. They don't have a two-way, the big dedicated two-way crossover network like the M6 does. So some things that allow us to bring the cost to a lower price point, but not just tear all of the performance out of it. These are phenomenal sounding speakers. They sound great. Yes, because they're a little smaller than M6, you might not get as much as the low end response as you may be looking for. They may not be as refined as M6, but these are still great sounding speakers. They're loud, they sound smooth, they sound fantastic, and they're also extremely efficient. These are fantastic speakers to use in low power app. I'm always a firm believer you should always have an amplifier in a vessel. But if for some reason you can't run an amplifier, if you're using a source unit like the MM50 or the MM80HR where you have built-in power, M3 is designed for those low power applications. These will sound great on, low power 15, 20 watt deck power amps. And of course, they're going to sound even better when you amplify them with an MVI, MX type amplifier. So really, really nice sounding speakers. We do also have the 10-inch subwoofer in the M3 family, but this is going to be an infinite baffle only. So if you do need a sealed enclosure, you're going to need to move to that M6 subwoofer. The M3 10IB is going to be for infinite baffle only. So again, we're going to mount it directly to the vessel and use all of that airspace behind the fiberglass to act as our enclosure. So very similar design concept to M6. They go through the same environmental testing as M6, heavy duty moisture exposure, UV, rapid heat. All of the tests we do for M6 are the same tests we do with M3. The materials are essentially the same, just kind of scaled back a bit to make it at a lower price point for those where M6 may be a little too much on the wallet. But a very, very nice sounding system and very far from entry level. We also have added RGB lighting to the M3, but it's going to be a more traditional. You don't have that transflective lighting that you're going to have with M6. Instead, on the M3 Sport models only. On M6, you can get the LED lighting on Classic and Sport because it's all on the top frame of the speaker. The grill orientation doesn't matter. On M3, the lighting is only going to be on Sport grills because the lights and the wires for the LEDs run through those the bridges or the grills, if you will. So you're going to have, I think it's 5 LEDs that surround the tweeter on the M3 models, and those illuminate the entire top of the cone. Unlike the MX product, these are full RGB now. It's not just that blue LED that MX had. Again, they can be controlled by that MLC-RW controller. And again, you can turn the dial to, there's a couple functionality options for the controller. Push and hold it for 5 seconds will turn the LEDs on and off. If you push and hold it for 3 seconds, you can go through and you can turn the dial to pick the RGB color you want yourself. If you push and hold it for 3 seconds again, you can adjust the intensity of the LED, so how bright are they. If you push and hold it again, it'll then start to cycle through the RGB colors by itself, and turning the dial on the MLC-RW will dictate how fast or slow that RGB transition is when it automatically cycles through all those colors. So if you want it a little slower, turn it one way. If you want a super fast transition, turn it the other way. And one of the cool things that this image really doesn't show us, in the center of the knob is an RGB LED as well that perfectly tracks to the speakers. So maybe this is down in the galley or something, and you don't have sight of the speakers. Looking at the controller, you know exactly what the speakers are doing in terms of lighting, because the controller is going to mimic it, and that's pretty cool. Additionally, with the speakers, if you have, say, an MFD in your vessel on the NEMA 2000 network that has RGB lighting controls, you can connect being that this is traditional RGB, that can be connected to the MFD or any other units you may have that control RGB through the NEMA 2000 network, and control the lights on the speakers from that source as well, which is pretty neat. Steve was mentioning earlier about if you are going to use another RGB controller, make sure it can handle a good amount of current. You know, if you look at the M6 6.5, 18 LEDs. Most speakers in a 6.5 have maybe 3, 4, 5 LEDs at most. We have almost 3 times that. So that means we're going to have a significant increase in current draw. The 36 LEDs on that M712 draw well over half an amp of current, 650 milliamps. If you have a couple of those on a boat with a lot of 880s, we're looking at a good current draw. I don't think we have a hard number, but I know in testing, we had tested 50 plus M6 10-inch subwoofers on the controller with no current related issues at all. So I can't imagine a system where you would, unless it's some mega yacht with ridiculous systems on every single level, where you would maybe run into a current issue. But ours is designed to handle a lot of current. And that was part of the design process with all of these extra LEDs. So, you have the beautiful glow, but there is going to be that increase in current. So if you're not using the MLC RGB controller, just make sure the one you're using, it's high quality so we don't have extra noise in the system, and it can handle a good amount of current, because M6 are going to pull that. M3, if you look, being they all have 6 LEDs, it's a significantly lower current draw at only 100 milliamps. You can kind of see the difference there, what a normal LED system is going to do compared to what the transflective LED is going to do. I think that extra current draw is worth it because they just look absolutely beautiful on top of sounding great as well. So that's all I had on the M6, M3 side of things. Of course, for any further support, please visit the JL Audio Help Center. If you go to jlaudio.com, just click support at the top or in that condensed menu bar at the side. In the Help Center, we have a lot of articles, especially under marine audio support, which will go further into system design, better install practices to help prevent any unwanted noise in the system. There's good articles on the car side as well that also translate to marine on how ground works, audio principles. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, if you're a new installer, if you have a new employee, our help center is a great place to learn. It's not just how to wire a woofer up, but we have hundreds of articles about the basics of audio, basics of electricity, marine system design that really allow you to not only install the products properly, but make sure they function to their best. And I think that's important in marine. As we've discussed, it's a loud environment. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome, but it's also a social environment. It's all about fun. And you definitely don't want your marine system, your audio system, to go out or blow a speaker or not sound right because something wasn't done properly. So there's a lot of good information on there. Also, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. We are coming out with our new 2-minute tech tips. So we're gonna try to do kind of like this is a condensed online training. We're gonna look at doing more kind of just basic tech tips. Here's 2 minutes to explain what a high pass filter does, or whatever the case may be. There's going to be tips on using tune software for MVI. So we're going to try to provide you guys with more quick, easy to devour information that gets straight to the point. Of course, please reach out to our technical support team if needed. They are marine experts. They're NEMA 2000 certified. They understand the marine environment. They understand troubleshooting vessels. We are not just a car audio company. We are multifaceted. We understand the car side. We understand the home side. We understand the marine side. And we really take a lot of pride at being experts in all of those categories, power sports. So whether it's marine system design, troubleshooting, NEMA 2000 integration, our team is on it in technical support. You can reach them on our website by clicking the help icon at the bottom of every page. You can submit a request through that help center by clicking the support link at the top. You can email them, technical@jlaudio.com, or you can always call the main number and follow the prompts to tech support if you want to speak to them directly. But they're very, very talented, especially when it comes to the marine side of things. So with that, I'm done. So I'm going to close out my keynote, and we'll open it up to any questions that may have come up or anything I didn't discuss that you guys want to. This is the time.
Fantastic, Rob. Thanks for that. I think we're on top of a lot of the questions. Let's see what happens. There's a bit of a lag for the Facebook group if there's anything that comes up. Rob, I love that you ended on our tech support team and what you shared about them being marine experts and really caring about audio. It really does them being the forward-facing people. It's great because they really do exemplify everything that goes into the products that we make. Engineering has the same passion and love for all types of audio, not just marine, car, or home. We like music, and it's this sounds a bit weird, but we like this stuff, and we make the stuff that we like, and the fact that other people like it is really great. And when you talk to the guys in tech, you'll definitely get that feeling as well. What I like is that the guys are out there. I know that they do their own installations on their cars and friends and family cars, and they work on boats, and we help out the OEM team when we need to. We work with the home audio crew. I mean, they're actively involved in just about every aspect of what we do. So I think it's a great way to end a really good session. So thanks for that. So Shay's asking if saying it's way off topic, but probably heard this before throughout the years, but would you kind folks give any thought into producing a head unit? What do you think of that, Rob?
I mean, obviously we've done that on the marine side of things with our Media Master products.
I think he probably meant something else though.
On the car side, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a measly product trainer. So I'm not speaking for the company by any means. But the way I look at it, the source unit market on the car side, it's already handled by a lot of good companies. They provide great head units. But you also have to remember, on the car side of things, it's becoming extremely more difficult to replace source units as factory systems are becoming more and more integrated. They have all the features you want, where back in the day, maybe you would buy a source unit because you wanted Bluetooth, you wanted iPod integration, whatever the case may be. They're all coming from the factory now. So to jump into a category that's already rather saturated at this point, where they're not needed as much, I would feel more confident and better if we put our resources into stuff that really matters. And that's, our bread and butter: amp, speakers, subwoofers, DSP, marine source units, and go from there, because it's not as much of a need in the car world anymore as it used to be.
Right, I agree with that. No, I know where you're coming from. The truth is that, if we as a company can't really make a really special edition or offer something significant to a given category, it's probably not something where we want to spend a whole lot of time and attention in. And as Rob's already mentioned, we realize that a lot of the more recent vehicles are very tightly integrated with their source units, and to replace a lot of that functionality is very challenging. And a lot of competitive brands out there have done an admirable job of creating some excitement in some of the products that they offer, but I think they're starting to struggle with it as well. But on the topic of marine, as we kind of noted, and Shay did clarify that he was referring to car audio. But in marine audio, it's sort of wide open still, and we can offer some significant improvements and advantages by doing a control unit or a source unit, and we have several that fit that bill. So we're never going to say never, but it's unlikely unless we can offer some significant advantage by using some of our technology or some of our engineering efforts. It's unlikely to happen, certainly in the short term, but in the long term, who knows? So we'll leave that as a probably not, but who knows?
So there's a question on Facebook that came up saying, I know a few at jail have used the IB subwoofers in cars. Have you heard of any non-jail employees doing this?
Only the cool ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think, back in the day, IB was a very popular option in the car world. It's not so much now as subs have become a little more efficient. We have more powerful amplifiers, so you can get more out of a compact enclosure. But I know Manville uses an M610 IB in his Cadillac, and we have a couple other people that are doing some IB stuff as well with the marine subwoofers in their cars.
I've heard of people out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head to name by name, but it's not just weird JL people that are doing it. There are others. Rob brought up back in the day mobile audio applications of IB. In the very early days of mobile audio, there really were no small enclosure subwoofers that would fit in cars. So a lot of what we used was pro sound and home audio gear that we would compromise in some way and kind of force it into some of these vehicles. And IB was a good solution. I should put good in quotes. There was actually some chatter about this in the Facebook. If you had the choice between an enclosed woofer and an infinite baffle woofer, and you could do both of them right, which one would you go? Like, which one would be better? And it's a tricky one to answer because done right is really the key word. So infinite baffle, by definition, is the baffle you mount the woofer on. It goes on for infinite dimensions. It goes on forever. Well, that really doesn't happen very often. It's very difficult to completely isolate the back wave of energy from the front wave of energy. And the better you do that, the better performance you'll get from an IB, which is why it tends to be popular in boats. In a boat, there's very often large spans of fiberglass or solid panels that you can mount a woofer to that'll effectively isolate the front from the back, but it's not really perfect. It tends to be lossy. Those losses will typically show up at extremely low frequencies and not really cause any problem in the meat of the base, so we tend to go with it. But in cars, doing infinite baffle is actually like really, really hard. I've only heard it done accurately and well only a few times. Manville's car, of course, being one of them. There was a guy from Canada that used to use 4 of the, I think there were 8 IB4s, ancient speaker, long time ago, but he put 4 of them across the back and he literally rebuilt the back end of the vehicle to completely isolate the back wave from the front wave. Some of the best low frequency I've ever heard. And there's no box, and it's really fantastic. But the amount of work that went into making it that good was just incredible. It's a lot easier to build a really good sealed or ported box for a woofer that's designed for it and get great results. So the answer of what's better, what's better is the one you could execute to the highest level. And very often in car, that's going to be a self-enclosed subwoofer. In a boat, you do have some more options, and we of course make some options, but the focus has been for IB because it's a bit easier to execute that to a high level without being, I don't want to call it this, but almost like an ICE or something that stands out on a boat. A lot of these boats, you're very pressed for usable space in the in what I would consider the passenger area, where people are going to hang out. Taking up some of that space is harder than doing an IB. So the reason why we make more than one type is not one is always going to be perfect, and whatever one's going to give us the best performance, that's the one you should go for. So Jeffrey followed up on that. So go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, Andy asked, any 2-ohm, 6-inch, 4-inch tweeter speakers coming down the pipe?
We are doing a very good job at JL Audio about not talking about any potential new products until they're ready to launch.
Very cryptic. Obviously, Andy, we do know why you're asking. A lot of amplifiers are optimized at 2 ohms per channel, and having a mid-range or other driver that has a 2 ohm coil could definitely lend some benefit to using those amplifiers. I would argue that on a tweeter, we might want to go the other way. Especially if you're doing an active system with a dedicated channel. The reality is you don't need nearly that amount of power on a tweeter element. In fact, you should be scaling back in almost all cases on a tweeter, not just for risk of damaging it, which of course is always prevalent on any speaker, but there's just a lot of energy. You know, it's a small driver, it's very efficient at what it does. A couple of watts of power into a tweeter in a typical application is going to be plenty. Really, really is going to be plenty. I could make a case on that mid-bass driver, though. I think I'd like to see a 2-ohm mid-bass, and I'll refer back to Rob's cryptic comment that we don't really want to talk about some of those things. I'm not saying that we are or that we aren't, and if we were, when that might happen, who knows? Our engineering development team, right or wrong, they work on lots and lots of different projects, and very often, by definition, what an engineer does is overcome obstacles, and we develop solutions around a given set of obstacles. And when it comes to driver design, there's a whole bunch of obstacles that we have to overcome. And as the team starts working towards overcoming those obstacles, sometimes they get rapid success and they can move to the next phase very, very quickly. Sometimes they hit a roadblock and they have to come up with different solutions and try different things. So that makes it very difficult for us to pinpoint any design cycle timeline. We work on lots of different things at once, and whichever one's gaining some momentum, we'll stay focused on to push that closer to finish. And we'll leave it at that. So we hear you, and a lot of us agree and would like to go down that path as well, in many cases anyway. So we hear you. Question on Facebook. I'm trying to catch up on it. You see anything in there that we got to hit, Kev?
I saw from Jim, how much of a risk do we run into using tune to get some of the really low frequencies on the IB subs?
I think, I'm guessing, I'm not sure exactly what he means by that, but again, I remember many, many years ago, I'm old, aren't I? It's a long time ago. There was an installation, and I remember talking to Manville about it. It was a person had done an installation in one of the F-body Camaro Firebirds or whatever. And in those vehicles, there was a staged well in the back where, you know, T-tops or storage stuff could be. And the traditional thing was to fill up the top section of it and put some, you know, nice woofers in there, and it would load against the back glass. But this installation was different. They actually put a couple of 12s. Keep that in mind, 12s down in the very, very lowest portion of that well area. And what they did was they used equalization to compensate for castrating the subwoofer's extension by putting it in a box that was way too small. So I think what he might be talking about is using an equalizer to kind of compensate for any shortcomings in the frequency response due to the application. Now, the thing with infinite baffle is, if I remember right, that's what he was asking about specifically.
On IB subs. Yep.
So if you're trying to bring it back, you're dealing with a cancellation effect, and an EQ is only going to make that cancel. The back wave and front wave are going to be affected with equal energy on an EQ. So whatever you do on the back wave is going to be equally done on the front wave. So whatever cancellation you have, it's going to be the same. So you can't really fix it with an EQ. It's a cancellation. The only way to make it better is going to be to improve that installation, improve the integrity of separating the back wave from the front wave. Now, to finish where I was going with it, if it was just a frequency response where there was a restriction or some issue, and it's usually going to happen in the opposite scenario other than what Jim was talking about, in the case of those 12 that I was talking about, the low frequency response was castrated because the box wasn't big enough and the speaker's motion was being restricted. So what they did was they forced it. And they just put a whole bunch of power at really low frequencies to try to boost them up, and they cut the upper end. So it was an incredibly inefficient system, but they got two 12s down on that bottom area. That was pretty cool. So it's not something we would recommend, but it was kind of a neat approach to using some equalization to compensate for compromised installation. Wouldn't work with IB because it's a different scenario, but it could work in some of these enclosed systems. With caution, though, because you put that kind of power through voice coils for anything other than a competition system, and you'll be the best friend of people selling warranty service, but not so much the people that are actually making speakers. So. Andy's making fun of our may or may not be developing something, and we deserve that. So Rob kind of made a comment it does speak true to some extent that our company has always been very excited to talk about some of the cool new things that we've been developing. And it comes from the passion for what we do. We like this stuff. And when people ask, what are you guys doing? We just want to tell you because it's fun. And we know you'll get excited and we'll get excited. And as I just mentioned about the engineering is also excited, and they'll start to, kind of share with us a lot of the information, and we get jazzed up. But if they hit an obstacle, and that obstacle could be, getting a certain tool done quickly, and it instead of 3 months or whatever the case may be, that slows our process down. And some of those slowdowns are unforeseen, or we expect them to be a certain amount of time and it turns out to be 3 times that. So sometimes we blow timelines, and that really upsets people because they get excited about it and they want to share it as quickly as they can. We've become much better about trying to hold back some of that information so that we don't disappoint when we don't ship it when we thought we were going to. And it's hard, believe me when I tell you, it's really hard to not share with you some of the great things that we are developing. But rest assured, we are developing lots of great things. And because of the way we develop things, I can't tell you exactly when, and I certainly can't tell you exactly what. But we do take the feedback that we receive from our partners, our retailers, our sales reps, our distributors, and of course our customers to find out what they're looking for from JL Audio. We're not the fastest company, not even close, but we tend to work really hard to offer some distinct advantage when we come out with our product. It just may not be immediate. So that's Andy's comment that he's been hearing this for a long time. That's why the DNA of the company is an engineering-based company from people that are passionate and really excited about what we do. So we've tried to control some of that. And we mentioned in a different session, this one's technically in Q&A, so we can refer. Some of the other sessions we've done, we kind of talked about the VXI was one of our best kept secrets. When we launched our VXI products for mobile audio, not that many people knew what we were doing. And even those few that did know, didn't realize how wide that product line was in terms of the number of models and all the different software and accessories that came out with it all right around the same time. That's unusual. It harkens back to the days that we launched W7s 3 years in a row. So we've gotten better, a lot better, and we have some other things that we're going to prove that we've done even more, in terms of holding back. So, but it comes from the right place,
right? All righty, guys.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you again. Marine Speakers is a huge part of who we are as a company, and 'tis the season, so they say. And as restrictions become reduced around the country and around the world, we'll start seeing the marine business really pick up again, and we're excited about it. We love it. We can't wait to get out on the water again too. The overview you've given on the speaker lineup has really helped in that regard. And we have other sessions. Keep an eye out on our Facebook page, as well as staying in touch with us. If you're on our email list, you'll get some information about upcoming trainings. And with that, I think we can end our session. And thanks again, Rob, for an excellent job today.